Hello, hello, LinkedIn and YouTube. Today, I'm super excited because I have a very special guest. This is someone who I think, was one of the first people I followed on LinkedIn when I first came on LinkedIn. And he just provides so much value. Not only is he very knowledgeable about LinkedIn, but he really understands social selling. And when I say social selling, I'm talking about the good kind of selling that we need to do when we're online business owners, the non-spammy kind. So I'm very proud today to welcome Richard Moore.
Hello, how are you? Good to see you.
Good, good. We're just going to wait for a second, see on LinkedIn if it's going live. I hope my
I've just
internet.
checked. You're all good. It's your banner has changed to a live stream.
Good, good, good. My mountain internet is terrible, Richard. It's terrible.
I don't trust my Wi-Fi, so I run things like this on a hotspot for my mobile. Then I'm safe. I know it's going to work.
I think I need to look into. Is it Elon Musk invented this Starlink or something like for
Exactly. That's what you need.
I really need it.
Plus, it makes you look cool as well. But yeah, you need one of those.
Right. Off the grid.
Exactly right.
Wow. Well, Richard finally got LinkedIn Live, so I was one of the last people to get it, I think, but
Oh no.
But maybe it was good because my internet isn't that great, anyways. But it's a shame because I really love having people come. But now I'm going to be doing a lot more pre-recorded stuff going forward because for YouTube, apparently that's better.
Yes.
Than live for the SEO.
Yes.
And I've been told that just, all around it's better.
I believe so. Yeah, I think it's definitely a good idea. Plus, it's a little easier on your schedule if you can record it.
Exactly. The only thing I don't know is like Facebook, they're really good with lives. Like I can find lives that I did like 6 years ago on Facebook. It's insane, right?
Yeah, it is. So that's where I cut my teeth. I know what you mean.
Yeah, I think someone told me they saved their lives on their company page on LinkedIn. So I'm gonna try to remember who told me that and figure that out because that could be a smart solution, right?
It would, absolutely. I think mine are all there as well. So yeah, not that everyone's necessarily on Facebook these days, but definitely it's a good place to. It's a really amazing platform. It's very well developed. So I found that lives there were just wonderful and very easy to access, download, and crunch down into other content.
Right. Well, I also wonder if LinkedIn is going to let us use the native live stream because, like Instagram or Facebook, they let you go live directly. And right now I've got StreamYard, I've got Riverside. Someone just offered me Restream. I'm like, look, I have enough tools. Why don't we just have a native tool?
I know. I believe it's coming. So that's good news. I think it was what was great is that they have these in the intermediaries in the meantime. But look at that cup, Crystal. Is it Christmas where you are already?
Oh yeah, I have to in the Alps. Remember, look, I have the mountains and
always Christmas in the Alps.
It's always my neighbors have already put up the lights.
Might as well. Yeah.
But I have to get snow tires. I always remember that. I'm like, oh, is it already that time? I have to put on
exactly. Or ski. You have to ski otherwise, don't you?
Yeah, no, I'm actually going to go next week and rent the skis for the season. So I haven't bought skis just because of storage. I don't want to have to store them. And then, but maybe I will. I'm not sure. But for my daughter, I rent them for the whole season. So last year around this time, we did the same thing. And that works really well. But
I miss skiing so much. I used to go to the Alps every year with friends and just haven't done it for a long time. So it was wonderful going up nice and high, the views you get of the mountains, and then just the peacefulness is wonderful. So it's nice extraction from work.
I was just talking to a business owner about doing retreats here because he said that he takes all his team and goes to like Singapore and Bali and all those nice tropical places.
Hot places, yeah.
And I said, look, I understand if you're from England, you want to go to a tropical place.
Yes.
But But think about productivity. Like, imagine your team, they spend a week in the hot sun drinking rum, then they come back to the office. Do you think they're in good spirits, but they're
No,
not productive?
they'll be a wreck, wouldn't they? That's the
And I'm
thing.
like,
I quite agree.
bring them here. They will have a rigorous hike. They will be in the snow at 5 a.m.
I burn some calories. Exactly right.
Right. Then they'll come back. They'll be even better. There'll be not a sick person in the office for the whole year afterwards.
I feel like you should be a travel agent as well as the other work you do now.
Oh, I'm a hustler. I might go for that,
Really?
Richard. I'm thinking about the whole retreat side
I'm
hustle.
down. Any excuse to come skiing would be brilliant.
Yeah, no, seriously. But I love having you on. So what's new in your life, Richard? I haven't spoken with you. I know we just spoke that you had been in the States. You did. How many times have you done this events?
So I'm glad you're talking about this because I'm doing one next week, so I can kind of promo it a bit. So Entrepreneur Business Live, I've done 28 now around the world. So you and I met officially in one of the San Francisco ones, didn't we? And they started in London in 2018. Our first overseas one was in 2019, in January 24th, in New York City. And next week is the fourth one in New York. And really simply, the idea is it's 2 hours, a networking in-person event. Basically, everyone gets together who knows each other on LinkedIn. and the idea is the first hour is 3 speakers on a topic. And then the second hour is simply just hang out, just network and meet each other. But the key part is that for everyone to attend, I ask them to donate $20 as ticket. And that ticket money, 100% all goes to a local charity. So every single one of those 20 events from Melbourne to Toronto, Ottawa, Chicago, Las Vegas, Barcelona, we've done them all over. They've all raised money for local charities. I don't pocket a single cent. So I get there on my own dime, as you lot say over there. And the idea is that I just it's a nice way to give back. As you know, being illustrious on LinkedIn as you are, Krista, when you get to a point where you're doing well enough and things are all good and you can you've got plenty of attention, it's kind of, in my opinion, borderline immoral to not try and give something back. And it might be in some form of value in even something like this, for instance. But for me, I was like, I want to give something to charity. So it's not like we have an event and we say, oh yeah, we'll just give some money to charity as well. The charity partner is front and center. They show up, they talk about what they're doing, and we talk about what their money is going to help them with. So I cannot wait. I missed it so much. So LA happened in May and we're back. And next year we have London, should be in January, and Barcelona in April. There's talk of Amsterdam as well, and a number of other places. So I'm excited about it kind of being resurrected. The pandemic wasn't kind for in-person events, was it?
No, now we have to catch up. And I heard that people this end of year are looking more to travel over gifts.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And I think I'm feeling that a lot, actually. People are like, I want to kind of emerge from hibernation. And it's not that we couldn't travel in the last year. It's that people just aren't used to it, and people are starting to get used to it again. So I'm pumped. Next Wednesday we'll be in New York, and we're going to have a lovely time. It's only brief, but it's a good reason to meet each other. I know you can be efficient and meet people on Zoom, but there's nothing quite right like meeting in person, is there? It was wonderful seeing you all those years ago.
I fully agree. And today I interviewed an entrepreneur who's done quite well for himself, whose name is Daniel Priestley. He wrote
Yes, of course.
some amazing books, Key Person of Influence, classic. He's written more. And 2 things you said just made me think of the interview is, number one, he made his fortune on in-person events. So his first big business was all based on hosting these massive conferences, filling the house, kind of like Tony Robbins style, but in Australia, going city to city, selling tickets, massive advertising campaigns, getting a bunch of influential people to come on stage. And that kind of led him to Key Person of Influence, because he was booking all these very influential people and he was admiring them. He was thinking, well, how did they get so highly popular and sought after and respectable? why can't anybody gain that?
Yeah. And that book's
You know,
so powerful. I can't remember the name of the other one, unfortunately, but that was his. That book's really powerful because it really breaks down the things that they do. And I know people who've done his course, and it's really fascinating that he takes you through the process of positioning. That's really the crucial part. Positioning as that key person of influence, and it's about it becoming your show, so to speak. So bringing in, kind of other people who are great speakers or personalities too, but really having yourself as a hub. And I think one of the things you have to do when you go on his course is you have to write a book and publish it as well. So it's really, he's not messing around. That's a fantastic guest.
Yeah, and I'm thinking you would be great. You should go to one of his programs if you get a chance, even just a live event, because he's based in London, although he has offices everywhere. Nay says she's putting them on her list. I think Nay has been following me for a short time, but she's already gotten so many book recommendations from me. I keep dropping them.
So what are you reading at the moment, out of interest? I'd like to know.
Oh, well, I'm actually reading Daniel Priestley's brand new book, which is called Scorecard Marketing. I'm going to be integrating the Score app into what I help entrepreneurs with, which right now is mostly building funnels, Richard.
Okay.
And the reason it you know how you have to meet the demand of the market. So when I looked at growing entrepreneurs and I said, well, what do they struggle with? Well, we could say everything, but then we've got like Daniel Priestley's program, his business accelerator, massive A to Z, full immersion kind of program, which not everyone's ready for or not accessible, right? I mean, and so one thing that I realized was people kept asking me more and more about lead magnets, email sequences, sales pages. And these themes kept coming over and over. And together, you put them together, you've got a funnel.
Yeah, absolutely. They all combine, and every part of them really needs attention. You can't have a good funnel without a decent lead magnet, for instance. It needs to work neatly together. And some people miss those parts, or almost worse, do the parts but poorly in some areas, and then they wonder why this perfectly formed funnel doesn't work. Is because they're missing bits in terms of their quality.
Right. And that's something we talked about with Daniel Priestley was, well, first of all, the Score app, I have to do some marketing for them because it's an amazing tool for funnels. But I think what's more important is what leads to what we're talking about today is like social selling. In this book, he goes into the psychology of the buyer. And so you and I both know, Richard, that the key to a good sales experience is conversation, knowing what kind of questions to ask that really build trust, that don't, how do you say, offend someone, or they're not too aggressive, too pushy, and definitely not too spammy. And you have to kind of move. It's like a fine dance, right? To figure out, are they showing you buying signals? I interviewed a woman named Nikki Rausch. You might like her books. She has one book called The Selling Staircase, and a second book called Buying Signals. And she talks a lot about that. She's like, most people aren't even active listening enough to recognize a buying signal. Like, this person has already stopped by 3 times. Why aren't you messaging them? Why aren't you trying to say hello?
But I think the word you use, dance, is such an important one. It's really essential to remember that there's elegance required here, because otherwise what you get is this salesy approach. But at the same time, well, we want to avoid going into the salesy zone. We also do want to lead, and we do want to essentially bring them in a certain direction, but only when cues come from them. And what that does, when you get it right, is essentially mean that they don't feel, and it's a feeling, they don't feel pressure. And when they don't feel pressure, they enjoy that process. If you ever put pressure on someone, you've gone too early. You've gone ahead of this cue that you should be getting from them. And there's a variety of them based on the process, part of the process you're in. But what's really important is that they enjoy that experience, not just that you're forcing the outcome of having the product down their throat. So it's really essential that the buying experience, this is something that people are kind of new to, is this idea that the buying experience can be something that can take place over days, weeks, and months. And in fact, speaking to the word automate that you use here, it can be something that is actually happening passively in the background through content, for instance. So it really matters that people who are daring to use social selling and looking at content and how that whole ecosystem works, they understand that it's about familiarity and trust, and them being the seeds of one another, and no deal will happen without trust. But really, it's essential to understand that people need to have a number of ways they can interface with you and be warmed up, and then there'll be a process so they just don't feel at any stage like there's anything salesy happening. And so the way to look at it is, when it's a beautifully put together deal, they never actually feel like they've been sold to. They've enjoyed that process. And I think someone put it so well once when they said to me, it's like, you're not trying to sell to them, you're helping them buy. That might sound cute, but that's actually beautifully explained right there. That's the aim. We're standing shoulder to shoulder with them rather than nose to nose, if that makes sense.
I love it. And that's one of the reasons I wanted you to come and talk about this, is because you're one of the people who does it best on LinkedIn, in my opinion. I really enjoy, especially your carousel posts, where you, because you're giving, unlike a lot of people who are just saying platitudes, generalities, you should do this, preaching down on people, you're actually showing them examples. And that's what I really try to reference you sometimes as an example to other people when I say, what does a good value post look like?
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I have to shout out the team. There's, just for the record for everyone, I do not make the carousels. They would look like a car crash if I tried to do it myself. It's that when you hire talent, as you know, it really goes a long way. But I think the essence of what I try to do, you've kind of described there. Rather than just be cute or say a nice thing, what I'm trying to do is share something that maybe people are kind of aware of, but they need that twist. They need that evolution or revision on perhaps a mainstream truth or belief. So what you're looking at is thinking to yourself, does the audience look at this post and think to themselves, do you know what? I hadn't looked at it that way before.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you can, like, you map back when you're writing this post or creating your asset for it, you should be asking yourself, what would it look like if I mapped back from this feeling of them thinking to themselves, no wonder I'm not getting the results I'm after, because I thought I had it right. But it's not that you're saying they're wrong. It's but there's this bit too. There's this blind spot or this little extra thing. And what I find, especially talking about buyer behavior with people and that kind of realm, is that they really love learning something new about themselves. And so the most profound posts, the ones that convert best, I find, are the ones where people say things in the messages, things like, I never realized I could do that with words, or I never realized that's why I react that way to when someone does X or Y. And so when you teach someone something about themselves, or indeed about their audience or buyers, it's like, it was so close to home. How did I not see this? And so sharing a blind spot or giving that twist is what people need to be thinking they should be adding to that value. Because I could, a classic post that we see all day on the likes of LinkedIn is, along the lines of, be nice, be kind, have gratitude, look after people. It's like, everyone will look at it and go, well, yeah, I know. But thanks. Okay. I suppose I'm reinforcing it. But what about if you were the one who said even that, and then, but also there's this thing as well. And I just think bringing a little edge just shows that you're seeing a little higher or thinking a little bit more about it. And that revisionist view, I believe, positions you as a slightly deeper thinker on it. And people seem to like that, certainly for the premium products.
Oh, I love that tip for content. One thing that what we were talking about buyer behavior and these small little tweaks. One thing that I had to work on personally is I have a very bossy, blunt personality. I'm very opinionated. And what that means is I evoke strong reactions. So by my
You're very
nature,
strident. I love that about you. It's
well,
brilliant.
yes and no, thank you. So, you know, some people are like, bravo, well said. You know, you
Mm,
said something I've been thinking, and I'm so happy you posted that. While other people are like, oh, it's too strong. You know, you're very too opinionated. And one thing in sales that I had to learn was to ask for people's permission before
mm,
um, I say, would you like to hear some tactics
mm,
that could improve what you're doing? Like, so
mm.
I always ask people, are you happy with the results you're getting right now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Instead of going at them like, look, I checked your LinkedIn profile, it's a total mess, or I went to your website, it's a wreck.
Yeah.
And we spoke about this in the podcast with Nikki Rouse. She was on my show, and she was like, have you ever gotten a DM from like, I'm a YouTube optimizing expert. I visited your YouTube channel. It looks like crap. Or your
Mm,
Instagram profile. I could grow you only have 10 followers. I could, you
yeah.
know, I could really help you. You need me. What
Mm.
is your first reaction, Richard, when you get such, even if it's true, your first reaction is
Oh,
like,
I mean, as someone who's a career salesperson and taught it, and I've been a sales director and all that, I will now actively like make sure on principle I don't buy from them because I hate being sold to. I think everyone does, but on
yeah,
principle, there's a little bit of a nasty part of me that goes, I'm massively not going to buy. The crazy part is that they might have an amazing product, but they've just killed themselves because they haven't got emotional permission from us yet. And what that means is you're so right about asking permission, but what essentially is really matters is that that person must feel they want to hear from that person as well. And that's why there's nothing wrong with what's being sold. It might be a great idea, but it doesn't work when it's step number one. It cannot work. You have to warm them first a bit. And like I'm instantly turned off, and I'm like, especially if I've received a connection request, it seems honorable, and then I accept, and then I get the spam. I'm like, unfollow, unconnect, delete, and that's the end of it. And it's just, people need to understand all that hard work, finding all those leads is being thrown away, and the idea that it works because your templated message has returned one deal in 700 messages, that's like saying it works to make $1 million a year if I play the lottery. Yes, if you buy enough tickets, you win the lottery, but that's not a strategy. That's your strategy there is hope. And that can't be how you do things. If you need in business, you need a strategy where you can say, this week I need leads and clients. And I know if I put in inputs A, B, and C, I get outputs X, Y, and Z, including deals. And it has to be that you have a sense of what process helps. So hitting hope is a terrible idea.
fully agree. That's why I brought it up, because I suppose, like me, you also get quite a few of those in your inbox, especially YouTube, Instagram, or LinkedIn.
All the time.
LinkedIn. I'm like, have you looked at my profile? What is going on with you?
Yeah.
But another thing I wanted to talk about, like warming up people, but also that whole pipeline process of building trust. I personally am always in my inbox. Like, I keep a good handle on my
Mm.
LinkedIn inbox. And as you know, there's a focused inbox, and then there's the non-connection inbox. I don't
Yeah.
even know if there's a name for that, but there is probably. It's
The
like the
background one.
in-mail,
Yeah.
the in-mail inbox, and
Yeah.
then the focused one. And you can drag people back and forth.
Mm.
Essentially, the ones that come in the focused are the ones who are your first connections. You've accepted the connection, and they're automatically in there. And the in-mail by default goes in there. All the promotions, like Sales Navigator, goes in the other one.
Yeah.
But I'm really like, I am here for business on LinkedIn. So I tell my clients, why are you not checking your DMs? You say that you need more clients, but you haven't been in your inbox for a long time. And now it's become a complete mess. So now you're even afraid to go in there. And how many times have I DM'd somebody who I'm connected with? So there already is a rapport. And I'm like,
Mm.
would you like to come speak at an event that one of my clients is hosting? Would you like to be on my podcast? Or I message them like, I'm looking for a podcast editor. And I don't get any response from them.
Mm.
And then like weeks later, they're like, oh man, I don't have any clients. I'm like struggling. It's going to be a hard year. I'm like, well, no wonder.
Exactly. They are there. They are there. And like, it's crazy. People think that the leads are kind of come and like knock them on the head and say, hi, can I buy please? And send an email. The thing is, they take a number of guises, and it might be a comment. It might be a profile view as a subtle one. But at the very least, check your inbox. And some people show off about having 1,000 unread messages. It's like, that's not cool. That, you know, who wants to buy from you? You need someone who's organized and know what they're doing. So work through it, clear the debt in that inbox. There will be money there. And I think, yeah, if we're here for one thing, it's for business. It's very wonderful to meet new people and so on. But ultimate aim here is to get clients out of it. Otherwise, I certainly wouldn't be here at all. There's not really much else for it for me.
Yeah. So I'm always surprised when someone tells me, like they have an autoresponder on that says, you know, they're like posting daily multiple times. They're massive LinkedIn creator, but then their inbox is like, I don't check this inbox,
Yeah.
and I don't want any messages. Like, leave me alone, basically. I'm like,
yeah.
wow.
And then screwing up the buyer journey right there. And it's like, you can never complain about having no clients if you're going to treat them like that. Because the thing is, if you have an automated message, and let's try and be helpful here. I mean, the fact is some people do have an automated message, but it will say something like, you know, email me this, or watch this message, watch this video or something. It's like, at that moment, that prospect, let's call them, is in a very fragile state. They're not hot or cold. They're maybe cool. They're slightly leaning in, possibly a level of curiosity. And so to essentially give them work to do in the form of, hey, like, send me an email, like go and scurry away and like find out, like write stuff to me, is giving them too much to do. And it sounds like, you know, it sounds like we're being too precious, but actually what we've got to recognize is they're not going to go and write us loads of stuff. Like, they might be showing a small amount of curiosity, and that's our job to nurture that moment. And so if someone looks in our direction, we should be the one taking the lead, saying, hey, thank you for doing that. Is there anything I can help with? And taking it from there. And I just think, yeah, putting them off and like an automated message, sending them elsewhere is it's like you've got someone in your shop. Speak to them. Makes sense, right?
Well, I think another pet peeve I have is when I message someone, a new connection. Hold on, Ivy. What? Don't be sad. I'll be there. She's watching something, a cartoon. But I think it's okay. But I think another pet peeve I wanted to say to you, and see if you've had this as well, is when, you know, you've made a new contact. That's the hot moment where, you know, they're like, who is this person? You know, and I'm like, hi, and I have my pitch, which I call it a pitch. It's a quick elevator pitch, you know. So I usually say something along the lines of, you know, I help service-based entrepreneurs grow their businesses on my platform, which is called From Zero to Six Academy, where I run a lot of programs for entrepreneurs. You know, and I'm also very active on LinkedIn. I have a podcast, and I have 4 kids. You know, I'm happy to meet you. So it's like, it's, you know, just a couple of sentences long, but
you're giving them a bit of everything. You're giving them the human as the mom and all that, as well as the work you do.
Absolutely. So I'm giving them like just a really quick, and then I say like, nice to meet you. I'd love to hear more about you.
Yeah.
So, and either I get dead silence, or I've gotten people say, no, thank you. even though there's no solicitation, no links, and they connected with me, which is the craziest part. So they connect, and then I call it well, connect and abandon, basically, because it's like here that they're just growing their account, they're adding people, they're collecting
Because this is
connections.
the thing. Well, you will remember the thing that predates this whole content thing that really started at the beginning of 2018 is the Lions, the LinkedIn online networkers. And that used to be the big thing. And what it was someone saying, hey, look at me. I'm the one with the big Rolodex of connections. And that culture has prevailed. And there's a lot of people who will collect. Hello there, Ladybird. There's a lot of people who will collect connections, and it's more about the number, far less about what might happen. And really, the focus should be depth in relationships rather than a volume of them.
Right. And what I tell people is some of the people I've started saying, I'd just like you to know that I'm not interested in collecting connections. I genuinely want to know about you.
Yeah.
And I also warn them, I'm not here to try to pitch you anything. I genuinely just want to know who you are, because there may be a situation. Well, there's often situations where there's some collaboration possibility, and I want to know who's top of mind. So
they might be able to help you. Exactly.
Yeah. And they're like, look, I really struggle with sales. Do you know anyone who has really a good, concrete, LinkedIn sales program or something? And I would say, oh yeah, Richard comes to mind. Or do you know anyone who's really good with content? I would say Richard. So, you come to mind for at least 3 or 4 things in my mind, because you've built a really strong personal brand and you've always been a genuine connection versus somebody who, like we just talked about. And another thing is go look at my profile. That really bugs me. Like, when I ask them, so I'd like to hear about you, they're like, well, then read my about profile or visit my website.
And an unwillingness to put any effort in. Exactly.
No.
Actually,
I'm like,
but
wow.
actually, there's a teaching point here for everyone listening, which is that despite popular belief that the whole game is content, it's not. The game is the community, and what that means isn't just responding to comments and replies on other people's posts or supporting fellow creators and that kind of thing. The game is these messages, and the game is the networking, which this site is simply a virtual networking site. Content is gravity to draw people in, but the main part is that when we do have a connection, we actually find out about that person, and that needs to be embraced. I really agree with you. It really does. And I think so. What I typically do is, if someone sends me a connection request, my message to them will be to thank them, much like you've described. But I'll ask them what made them decide to send the connection request, because that's always interesting. And the response sometimes is quite pithy, and you get a response along the lines of, oh, LinkedIn suggested it. I was like, well, if LinkedIn did, but not you, well, maybe it's not worth it. But if it's something like, I'm loving the things you're doing, then great. We've started our conversation. I find that that's a nice primer. And then I will go into something along the lines of what you've described as well. But people need to understand the game is not content. The game is the magic that happens between individuals, especially when you take cues from the offline world and how we interact as humans there as well.
Today, Daniel Priestley, I told him I've read his book at least 3 times. It's published in 2010, and now it's 2022. And I think this was the 3rd time I've read it. Wow. So, and he has these 5 elements of influence. What's the very first one is pitch. And he also says they need to be completed in the specific order.
Okay.
So the first one is pitch. And he's like, what's your elevator pitch? And he says, 90% of people don't know how to just introduce themselves in a compelling way, because we don't need another sales coach, another LinkedIn coach, another business coach. When you hear that, it's like, oh, okay. And
Exactly.
you may be an amazing person, Richard, but if you go around introducing yourself as just another X, then you're just another, he called it an industrialist way of
Yeah.
he talks about the industrial age and working in a
Yeah.
factory, and you're just replaceable. So if you're just a
Absolutely.
sales coach, a business coach, you're just replaceable.
Yeah, you
But
need to be indispensable and unique. And
yes,
actually, what's important people understand is that it should go deeper than the solution that you focus on. It should be relating also to the demographics. And what he's talking about here in an elevator pitch is concise yet specific. And when you add the specificity, it really starts making it more compelling to particular people. And absolutely, it needs to have a acknowledgement that you are special at a particular thing. But for instance, a lot of people's elevator pitch and even their headlines in LinkedIn, which is a really good place to have a sense of their elevator pitch, they use words like, they say things like, I help businesses or I help professionals. It's not good enough. It's like, well, what kind of businesses? Pharmaceuticals, finance, non-profits, charities, like which ones? And professionals, so literally anyone. Like if it's literally everyone, why are you even saying it?
or
And so
businesses and individuals.
yeah, I often you see I help individuals. It's just like, oh, it's got to be something specific. So when you have the right, it's not just the problem and the symptoms of the problem that you help people with. It's also the particular people themselves, because then they'll know you're speaking to them, and they're like, well, that's not just the problem, but that's who I am. I identify as that type of person. So, for instance, some people say, for want of an example, some will say entrepreneurs, and there are some people who are entrepreneurs who don't identify as one.
Yes.
There are some people who aren't, who are and do. Equally, words like influencer, for some it's a dirty word, but for some it's like, no, I'm an influencer and that's how I see myself. And there's no wrong or right. There's what your audience identifies as well as
True.
showing awareness of the problem that they actually encounter each day.
And I think along your lines, I want to add that you can also do some A/B testing with these things. Like in my own profile, I will update my title very often. And I've gone from saying, I help service-based entrepreneurs because it's shorter, but specific, to build online businesses, with my academy, specializing in funnel building and more, right?
Yeah.
But I also have said in the past, I help coaches, consultants, SMEs, and small business owners building online businesses in service industries,
Yeah.
But it's very tricky. And I think people just underestimate the power of the pitch and the importance of, when we hear pitch, we think, oh, bad. But honestly, it's like, all we're trying to do is answer the question, what do you do?
And you're being useful.
So
You're being useful. You're qualifying this conversation. You're being so valuable to that person because they get in a second whether or not there's an opportunity that you might be helpful. And people need to understand that there's nothing wrong in someone disqualifying themselves or you disqualifying yourself from them, because what that's doing is it's moving this connection to a place where maybe you're just the connection then, or maybe they support your content because they love it, but they're probably not going to be someone you're putting in your pipeline. It's okay. You've filtered, and look at the time you've probably saved as well. So there's a lot of value in having the statement of what you do, and to a degree in your intent upfront, so that people have a sense of it before you go too far into using up time when someone might be completely wrong.
So what you just said is pretty much pre-qualifying people. So if you tell me from the get-go in your introduction what you do, I can understand, and I understand what you do, then I can know if you might be a prospect or not.
Exactly.
But I want to say another pet peeve I have. So in the 5 elements of influence, number 5 is partners.
Okay.
And what I've seen happen is exactly the opposite problem, is that I've been disqualified. Apparently, I said something that made me, oh, okay, you're not a prospect anymore.
Right.
So therefore, they basically ghost me and never speak to me again and
Yeah.
ignore me in the feed, in the DMs. Some even have unfriended me afterwards. I'm like, oh, wow. And what I want to say is, one of the things I've learned in business is the power of having good partners. You cannot go very far in business without building your network. And when I
Yeah.
say network, so just because I'm not a prospect for you, like I value you, Richard, I don't know if I'd ever like hire you directly or vice versa, but I could imagine a lot of scenarios where there could be some potential collaborations, just like we're doing right now.
Exactly. Referrals are a
And
wonderful
referrals,
thing.
right? I have
Referrals
an
are
affiliate
wonderful.
program, so
Exactly.
I always like, I'm building that out even more, so,
Mm.
you know, that I can really build up some power partners for my launches.
But this is crucial, and I've, you know, it could be, it could not have been, you know, acknowledged in books or invited on podcasts or asked to speak in masterminds, and all of the above have helped generate clients indirectly. And the way we need to look at this is, just because, or rather, another way to put it is, the way we should view someone. At the worst case, the least we get from them is a great connection. And you might be thinking, oh, for goodness sake, that's a waste of time. No, because
No.
there's no such thing as an individual anymore. There isn't, because everyone has a network now. And so if that person thinks I'm great, we got on well, if we, you know, if they dig my style and we had good banter in the DMs, despite not going anywhere commercially, guess who's seeing my content tomorrow? That person. And then
Yep.
they see it again and see it again. And then, of course, as they engage with it, what happens? LinkedIn, of course, says to some of their network, you know, this person's been engaging, perhaps you'd like to see it too. And it's, you know, network effect is incredibly powerful. And so you really should ignore people at your peril, because every person you connect with is potentially someone who might refer you. And I have, if you think about when I started this whole thing, was 2014 on Facebook. And there are people who still follow me now, who follow me back then, some of whom have never paid a bean. They've never bought a thing, but they've relied on them in many ways to help me grow, because they've been the ones who are like, they show up for me. And like, I've maybe hired some of them. You know, you've got to remember this. And people evolve in their roles. They might have a different role in the future. And this is not a week or month-long campaign. This is the rest of your professional career. And your network's pretty much the most important part of it.
Well, we're on LinkedIn, a professional platform, and one of the best career advice I was ever given was, you don't follow the company, you follow the boss. So if you have a great boss, you know, several years later, that boss may be like, I'm looking for somebody. I'm gonna ring you up and just see where are you happy in your job? You know, maybe you're interested, maybe you know someone who's interested. I'm building a team over at this new company. So I think, you know, the same goes with, this is how we should view LinkedIn. It's not about how many likes you get or even how many followers you have. What's important is, how many good connections have you made, whether or not they're prospects, partners, or just become good friends. You know, like you're going to travel around, you know, you always have people in all these cities to meet with, and they know people. Like you said, we're all in these ecosystems.
I can't begin to disagree. I think it's absolutely spot on. And, you know, despite this being a people sport, it can be lonely sometimes. We're all working at home half the time, and having peers to be able to send a message to and catch up with. I did this earlier today with someone. I just literally were like, we said last week, let's have a call and just hang out. Like no work, just hang out and see how each other's doing. And it's really good support. And you're quite right. And no matter where I go, in New York, for instance, there's a bunch of people I know who have known from LinkedIn. And that means there's a warm welcome waiting. And so I just think it's really essential to put the effort in, because you never know where it will go. And, you know, burning bridges is an incredibly short-term view. The only reason really why people do it is because they're like, well, I want to get onto the next league because I want money right now. But long-term is really worth working on, because as Warren Buffett said, someone is sitting under a tree they once planted, or something along those words. You know, someone's got the shade from the tree they planted. So the sowing and harvesting thing is really worth it, rather than knocking on a fresh door every day for a deal.
And you also never know who you've insulted, because I've been insulted twice this week. Once I was called a wonker wannabe. I don't even know what that means. And someone from the UK called me that, but then there was another person who called me a rando, some rando. And I was like, oh, wow. Some rando commented on my post. And I'm like, oh, thank you. That was me. I feel so special. And the truth is, you know, like you said, we're all in these ecosystems, but what if that turned out to be the sister of your biggest dream client? And then one day you're invited to an event and he said, do you know my sister? And the sister's like, oh yeah, I know very well. And the deal will be very quickly off. So you never, I always use that example because I have, you know, 4 kids, and I tell them, I'm like, you know, be really cordial with people, because you know, if you made a bad joke, go apologize, because you never know, someday that person might be in a position where, you know.
Well, it's that thing, isn't it, of a reputation takes years to build. Yeah, a reputation takes years to build, but seconds to ruin. And it's really essential that we're not paralyzed, and we still are open to a healthy level of risk and things like that. But what we don't do is throw our toys out of the pram if someone's upsetting us or something like that. We think hard about what we're doing in the public eye, or indeed in private. And a nice rule of thumb, which many people have shared, is if you wouldn't say it in front of everyone, then you probably shouldn't say it at all. And I just think it's really healthy to recognize that if you act as though all your future clients are watching you right now, it's a really nice filter to make sure you're doing the right thing and not like being petty, and you're considering the fact that your reputation is all of those hard years of work that your past self put in. And, you know, don't throw it away. It's really the most important thing we have, isn't it?
Well said, Richard. And I know I can always count on you for the polite, elegant way of dealing with
it. I know. Between the two of us, we make really good points. I think, yeah, you're definitely a direct one out of the two of us.
But I do believe that LinkedIn is changing. So these lines are getting blurred. And unfortunately, I've had clients who've said to me, well, I see this happening all the time, so why is that bad? And, you know, I have my opinions. For example, I do believe that we can be totally personal now on LinkedIn. You don't have the Facebook police anymore. In fact, I feel like the people from Facebook have all come over to LinkedIn now.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's been flooded lately, isn't it?
It's flooded. It's definitely changing. And I think LinkedIn is encouraging that. They want it to be a legitimate social platform, not a professional one, just.
Users spending time on the platform,
right,
for obvious reasons as well, advertising and so on. But you're absolutely right, and I welcome it. Having been on LinkedIn for so long, it was like, yeah, it was professional, but it was quiet as heck. There was nothing going on, and now there's so much more variety, and everyone just needs to know, if you don't like certain content, so you can switch it off. Just don't engage with it and unfollow, and don't show me stuff like this. And it's quite easy to curate what you see, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I don't really scroll the feed. I'm a professional, so I have already a list of things I want to do on LinkedIn when I get there. So I don't even use it very much as a social platform. The socializing for me happens in the comments that I leave and then in the DMs. But I'm not bothered by it at all. No. I just think it's definitely changed since I've been on the platform.
It has. I think it's brilliant And what's exciting is, I must say, what's exciting is Gen Z are now they've only known their social platforms, and now they're a professional age. So they're now in their 20s and so on. And it's brilliant because what they're doing is they're mixing up what works, and they're making those of us, myself, for instance, who are more in our 40s, wake up and say, well, what works and what's getting attention? And we are still looking at it and going, well, some things get attention, but not the right kind of attention. Some things get attention and I can leverage that for my business. And I love that there's this melting pot. And what's interesting is that in the last couple of years, it's been people from other platforms coming to LinkedIn. What I love now is that some content creators on LinkedIn are starting to mature to the point that you get them breaking other platforms. So they're starting to kick off on TikTok, and
Right.
they learned on LinkedIn. So it's now the reverse. It's wonderful. And it's just laughable that many social media agencies will pitch that they will cover social media and do all this great stuff. They'll do Twitter, they'll do Instagram, they'll do, and they don't even mention LinkedIn yet. And it's like, really, it's an exciting play because this is the business context, and anything B2B, certainly, it's madness to not be leveraging LinkedIn now, given how incredibly generous the algorithm still is. Because relatively speaking, no one's making any noise. Almost 1 billion users, basically no content compared to the other platforms. It's these are the golden years. It will go away. In 5 years, it will be incredibly different. And I'm not saying it's like it's game over. We're actually still quite early in many respects, aren't we? But I think that people need to make the most of it now whilst it's relatively quite quiet.
Yeah, I've noticed 2 big trends who've come recently in the past year and a half.
Yeah.
I guess since they started the creator program almost at the same time. Number 1, a flood of professional copywriters.
Yes.
They have gone off and spread the word. I think it was somebody like Justin Welsh. I don't want to blame him, but I'm saying he was the poster child. And the people over at Twitter, the people on medium.com, they were like, whoa, like, look at what he's doing over there. And how do we need a piece of this action? Like, we're professional writers and we should be over there as well. And of course,
it's the gold rush. It's the gold rush, isn't it? And it's like in San Francisco, the people making the money sold the shovels. And it's the same here. The people who can teach you how to use LinkedIn, how to convert, how to ghostwrite, or rather how to copyright or whatever, they're the ones who are really winning, because, of course, that's the lubricant that helps those trying to close deals really get places. So it's a really good observation, actually.
And they're just raking in the money. I see them in my feed now, and it's just they're laughing. They're like, 700 likes, 1,000 likes. And they're just like professional copywriters, and they're doing so well because they know how to write. It's like they discovered this brand new toy, and they're like, oh. And then I see the TikTokers coming. So I've seen a couple of people who are really good with TikTok who have come to the platform and who are using it more. And I think those people are more sponsored by LinkedIn. They're more in the creator program, but they're being encouraged to bring TikTok. And I think that's a political move for Gen Z. I really do.
Yeah, and it's exciting because what you've got there is the text and the visual in the form of the videos, and both are able to really court the attention of humans on such a base level. So the human animal responds to certain visuals in really important ways, or hooks in text. We respond to the ways in which things are written. And so this art of communication is being so interestingly developed. And what I love is that marketing and sales, for instance, they never stand still. And so what you see is a trend or a style of post will be new and fresh, and everyone will be then starting to do it. And then 6 months later, we're all poking fun at that style because, of course, that's been overdone. A great example being, for instance, oh, hi, I don't think I've introduced myself for some time. Here's a post about me. And it's like, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. And it's actually a really good idea in many ways because you've got a bunch of new followers. But we've we hit peak that style of post a while back. And of course, then if you're doing you do it now as a parody. And so really, like as marketers, it's fascinating seeing what the bleeding edge really looks like. And those that have true awareness are the ones who kind of poke fun at the subculture of like what's a bit out of date now. It's hard to keep up though, and but that's what's exciting.
Oh my God. So right before this live, and right after we end this, I'm gonna send you this on the LinkedIn feed. Tim Denning, if you're not following him, he's an excellent writer, and he's an example of someone who he's been on LinkedIn a long time, but he's a Medium top writer. And he was writing on LinkedIn when all the Medium writers were like, what's LinkedIn?
Yes,
and he was quietly raking in the views by himself. And then now some of his people from Medium have come to join him. But he just posted his newsletter a couple of minutes before this show. And basically he has one of his writer friends who decided to do an experiment to poke fun at LinkedIn's culture.
Okay.
He's a professional writer, so he's really a good writer. And he did a series of posts that were absolutely 100% fake news, but outrageous. But he did it in such a serious tone. And because LinkedIn was a professional platform, people thought it was true.
Yes.
And Tim basically took, like, with his permission, obviously, like 4 posts that he did.
Yeah.
And then highlighted some of the most outrageous comments and put it into an article. And it's all poking fun at the professionalism of LinkedIn, how we're so conditioned that we're professional that even when someone posts something that's absolutely impossible,
the thing I love the most, I really love it, is April Fool's Day every year. So this year, because people knew I was in the creative management program and so on, this year I wrote a similar post and I shared it as an announcement. I'm really thrilled. I'm so proud. Thank you, LinkedIn, for giving me the opportunity. I'm looking forward to people's opinion on this kind of thing. And I went through it because, of course, there's been this flurry of LinkedIn features, stories, carousels, live, whatever, over the last few years. I'm like, I'm so pleased I get to beta test LinkedIn karaoke. And I left some really, I'll try and find it, some really subtle clues. I said, obviously at the moment, it's really like, low key, but I kept it really like chill all the way through. And what I was saying was, there's beta this, there's beta that. And right now it's like, there's only 4 tunes. And the tunes I picked were ones that were clues about it being April Fool's. And some people were like, oh my God, like I had no idea. And like, wow. But I wrote a comment and afterwards, I wrote a comment underneath. I was like, it's obviously an April Fool. Can you imagine me? I would decline it. There's no way I'm going to sing. But I had to. What I did was then I explained, like, here's why this post works so well, because I was coming with this kind of flavor. People are like really drawn to it. It was great. I'll find it. I'll send it to you. It's really good fun. I have a great idea for next year's. I have to say, just because we're on topic, my favorite one was, I think it was 3 years ago, when LinkedIn Live came out. It was, and I remember I posted that I've been selected to do Microsoft Word Live. So Microsoft Word now has live streaming, and I had a screen grab, I think it was, of like, it was a Photoshop run of Microsoft Word, and I was streaming live in it. And people were like, oh my God, well, that's weird, but like, good for you. And okay. And it's so much fun. So like, I can't wait. I've got a really good idea for April. It's just April 6 months away, and I'm looking forward to doing it.
That is so fun. Well, I'm happy that we are having more fun on LinkedIn, but I'm going to send you Tim's article. You're going to have such a great laugh, especially the comments. People had no idea this is like, how could this not be true? He wrote it in such a serious manner, just like what you described. People aren't expecting it.
No.
Oh my goodness. Well, we definitely need more comedians over on LinkedIn, don't we? So
yeah, we do. And I think it's good that people are daring to be a bit more engaging in that way. And the truth is that, I know some people who are like, they're big in comedy and like comedy and improv. being tools that we can use in business in general. And like, no, but it's serious that it can help lubricate a business meeting kind of thing. And
Absolutely.
it's interesting that people say there's no place for comedy on here, but it's like, but there has to be. If everyone loves it so much that these posts blow up, well, sorry, you're missing something. It must be that it is valuable. As the key thing though is, as long as those who use, for instance, humor are getting the outcome they're after, because what's essential we understand is that we can do certain types of posts and go viral, or at least get a huge amount of engagement, but are you getting the outcome you're actually after? If you're here just for self-expression, good for you. But if you're not converting and you're here for business, well, you need to look at what you're doing from that moment of having a lot of attention. And there's a really good example of this backfiring is finding viral videos are easily done. There are websites that actually just have reservoirs of this stuff, like the kind of, cute little ducks walking along the path and falling off, or a puppy or something. You can't miss with that kind of thing, or some heartfelt story about someone helping someone who's homeless or whatever it might be. You can go post that stuff and you may well go viral if you write it with the right sentiment, but you're courting probably completely the wrong demographic.
Absolutely.
And so you've got to ask yourself, well, what's the play here? And how do I map back from that audience that is very disparate to end up being, buyers of my service? So as long as we have an outcome in mind, it's all good. And Mark's made a really good point here in the chat. It's like comedy is in life. And so it should be reflected here. And again, that's back to that point we made earlier of like, we should be borrowing cues from the offline world. What do we like one-on-one? Well, why shouldn't it be as organic here too?
Lovely. Well, let's end it on that sentiment, because
Really?
we definitely we'll reconvene next year and compare notes. What's happening on LinkedIn?
Yeah, it will have changed a lot, I'm sure.
I'm loving YouTube, and that's where I'm getting a lot of cues too about look at all these amazingly creative people on YouTube.
So impressive.
And I know why. They're compensated for view time. And
Indeed.
I hope LinkedIn will. I've heard they're kind of talking about some ways of helping creators. So
Some kind of subscription would be really interesting. Yeah.
yeah, I would love that. So all right. Well, thank you, everyone. And we'll hopefully get some more people on the replay to see us.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed myself.
You.